A warning, this podcast contains content some listeners may find confronting or distressing. Listener discretion is advised.
9 podcasts.
Alrighty, this is a record of interview being conducted in the interview room at the air station on today's date, Monday the 1st of October 2018. Okay, this is a record of interview between myself, Detective Sergeant Gavin Neal, and Dean Webber. Now, Dean, we'll just get you to have a look at the clock up there.
It's just after 5:30 in the morning, and 19-year-old Dean Webber's seated in an interview room at Ayr Police Station.
First of all, you have the right to remain silent. That means that you don't have to say anything or make any statement unless you wish to.
He looks like a suspect. He's still wearing the blue forensic suit he changed into at the scene. And sitting next to him are 2 police, the lead detective and a uniformed officer. They're taking notes, and it's all on tape.
Do you agree that at the scene earlier today down at Alva Beach there that you were arrested?
That's correct.
At the scene?
Now, towards the start of this podcast, you heard a pretty clear assertion that Dean has never been interrogated or challenged to the degree you might anticipate for someone who's killed 2 men. And considering the drama and confusion you've already listened to from the night of the Alva Beach Stabbings, you may too have an expectation of how police questioning of Dean Webber would go. I doubt this is what you'd have in mind.
Did I stab him?
Sorry?
Did I stab him?
Well, they've got stab wounds to the chest.
Welcome to episode 3 of Alva Beach, Death at the Door. I'm Adam Hegarty. For all the interest this case attracted, you may be surprised to hear that the interrogation video you just heard has never been released publicly. It's inside that police station interview room where key contradictions arise. Dean's response there, "Did I stab them?" is strange to say the least. You can absolutely put that down to shock. The interview happened just hours after the traumatic encounter. But it shows once again how little Dean Webber has ever had to explain. Crucially, it's a sentiment shared by an officer who was in that police interview room.
That interview, just for me, I didn't feel like we were asking all the right questions.
To Justin Luke, this was no real interrogation, interview or questioning. It was just a formality.
Whilst you have an opportunity to interview a suspect, some hard questions should be asked. And there wasn't a lot of challenging going on.
Justin Luke is doing something you rarely see or hear. He's spilling the beans about the police response he was involved in as a senior officer to say the investigation just didn't feel up to scratch. You heard in the last episode, he was the first officer through Dean's door that night. Not only that, he was the other officer in that interview room. He's scathing of how the lead detective handled the investigation, especially in these early hours after Tom Davy and Corey Christensen were found dead in Dean's front yard. And when I say he's been grappling with what happened and how police approached the case, I really mean it. Justin was so affected by the events at Alva Beach, he's been diagnosed with PTSD. So we were mindful, of course, about how hard it was going to be for him to talk about this publicly for the first time. He's long been a keen fisherman. So when I visited Alva Beach, it made sense to meet up with Justin on his boat at what was one of his favourite fishing spots, Ocean Creek.
How's it feel being back out here?
Surprisingly good.
That's good.
It's about a 20-minute drive out of Alva, and secluded would be an understatement. We were the only ones at the boat ramp, and the only boat on the water as we navigated mangroves towards the mouth of the creek. Usually, it would be a very peaceful excursion, but not for Justin. It's sad and quite fascinating, the effect PTSD has on a person.
I can't even remember the last time I came out in the water.
What stopped you?
Yeah, it's a bit hard to obviously say why that incident at Alva Beach that night stopped me.
Well, Justin, mate, I can see the tears in your eyes already.
Yeah, I think people just don't understand, the impacts of PTSD on someone. And yeah, it was almost like a zone that I couldn't go near, and fishing was one of the things.
Going for a fish gave us a sense of the area, but also of Justin's complicated relationship with this place. It was written on his face, and you can hear it in his voice. He's in a constant battle to keep his emotions, excuse the pun, under the surface. It's one of the reasons he's never spoken publicly about the night in question until now.
I mean, I used to go to Alva Beach daily to visit Mum and Dad, or go out fishing, or go out and hang on the beach. And I think I went out about a handful of times.
It all just comes back when you think about it, doesn't it?
Yeah, Adam, I went out, imagine going out there daily and then all of a sudden I could count on my hands the amount of times I went out. But it's just been a longer than expected journey to find my way back to normality again. I would have thought the journey of healing from that was a little bit quicker, but apparently it's not. Yeah, and the other frustrating thing is there's no explanation for it. Like, yeah, there's no real understanding as to, why I'm like it.
Were you sitting here now? You'll get there.
Yeah. I mean, this is fantastic. It'd be better if we were getting bites.
I spent about an hour fishing with Justin. He'd switch so quickly between proudly and excitedly showing off the sights to welling up. And it could be the most random questions that led to tears. It was no different when we sat down for our interview in his parents' living room in the heart of Alva Beach. There's a familiarity, but also a striking contrast between this Justin and the one you hear on the police tapes, that calm, methodical policeman. I suppose that's trauma for you, but in a way, I see Justin and the impact on him as a bit of a sign that there's something more to the tragedy of Alva Beach than you hear on any recording.
Well, take me back to that night if you can, Justin. What was your role at Queensland Police?
So, general duties, I was a senior constable.
So a very experienced police officer at the time.
Yeah, I would describe myself, and I think my colleagues would describe me as very experienced. Often, I'd be the senior officer at a scene. Often I'd be making the decisions and running the operations. Often went to lots of serious jobs where I'd just naturally take over, just based on the experience that I did have.
Do you remember where you were, what you were doing that night?
I'd only been home maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, and put my head down on the pillow, and I got a call from Noel, the police officer at the station, and he just started describing the job. And all my years of policing, some would say, Justin's really chill, he's relaxed, doesn't rush to things. But as that job was being read out to me, I knew that this one was serious. There was a sense of urgency that developed within me.
What was he saying? What were the words on that computer screen that got you so concerned?
I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, "You better get here now. I think 2 people are stabbed and possibly dying. And I'm going, are you sure? Are you sure?" So I basically just jumped straight in my clothes and boots and ran to the police station. I didn't run for any job, but that night I did.
You knew that night that you were going to arrive at something
It
awful.
was just something inside me that, it's hard to explain.
Mate, can you get on the ground for me? Is there anyone else? Yep.
We have the benefit of watching your body cam when you do get to that house. It's confronting for anyone to watch.
Yeah. With them types of jobs, just go into a different, zone, or like I get down to business.
Don't move.
How did you secure the scene?
We handcuffed Dean because he had the blood on him. So I can't remember whether he said that he'd stabbed people at the time, but Noel put him in handcuffs, and I quickly moved through the house because we were exposed. Like it was a high risk situation because who knows who else was in that house. I remember seeing a knife on a little table, but I was pretty happy that not that Candace was injured, but it looked like she couldn't get up. So I'm thinking, the knife should be somewhat safe there if she was the one that stabbed anyone.
You can hear there from Justin how unsure police were in those early stages about what exactly had happened. You'll remember from the last episode, Justin was the only officer inside Dean's house, trying to eke out little bits of detail from the teenager.
You haven't had any trouble with them today? Okay.
The other police, including lead detective Gavin Neal, were outside speaking with witnesses, including an intoxicated Louis Bengoa.
But do you want to tell us what? No.
He wasn't given them much at all, initially omitting the fact Candace had come off his buggy in a manner that instigated the terrifying ordeal. And at this point, there was no forensic investigation happening inside or outside the home. So really, police didn't have a great deal to go on.
We didn't know who stabbed these people. We didn't know where they were. We didn't know if there was another person injured.
Police have a duty and a job to figure out what's going on. When you were all there, and Gavin in particular, what conclusion did you come to about what had transpired? Was it immediately decided that this was self-defence, Dean Webber was the victim?
I don't believe at the scene any decisions had been made. And Dean's version of events was only provided to me. I was the only one in the house asking all the questions. And if you watch my video, my recording, you'll see that I'm taking Dean back to key points, just trying to work out, what his version of events might be.
So what happened with the door?
I don't know how he happened to pulled it up.
To be honest, I was actually surprised he spoke to me, considering, what had unfolded.
Now, of course, the need for an official interview with a suspect in a fatal double stabbing goes without saying. But intriguingly, and I should say Gavin Neal strenuously denies this, Justin Luke claims it was him, not Gavin, the lead detective, who pushed for it to happen as soon as possible.
You're one of two officers who eventually interview Dean at the police station.
Yeah.
What did you make of that interaction with Dean?
Look, I feel like I was the one that was encouraging the interview.
Why was that?
I don't know. I found that bizarre. Why should I have to suggest it? I remember saying, we need to get him on tape because this might be the only opportunity while he wants to talk for us to get the story, because after this, if he gets a lawyer, there's going to be no communication whatsoever. So if we don't get what we can get now, we may never know some of the things that unfolded.
Turns out, after all, the police station interview would end up being one of only 2 opportunities to get anything out of Dean. In fact, beyond the first 48 hours after the fatal stabbings, the teenager would never be questioned or heard from publicly ever again, despite the questions that would eventually arise.
Just for the purpose of voice identification, I'll just get everyone to state their full name. Just firstly yourself.
Dean Joseph Webber.
Okay.
Acting Sergeant Justin Lee.
Okay, and as I said, my name's Gavin Neal, Detective Sergeant, registered number 7652.
It all puts this 5:30am police station interview into further context. Dean's had a few hours to process it all, and it's the first opportunity for investigators to get to the bottom of and clarify what happened. Justin is there, as Gavin asks the bulk of the questions.
Now, what I intend to do here this morning, Dean, is conduct a record of interview, and by that I mean that my questions to you and anything you should wish to say.
In the video, you see the 3 of them sitting alongside each other at the table. From left to right, it's Justin, then Gavin, then Dean.
And that you are under arrest at this point in time. You understand that?
I understand that fully.
Okay, no worries. Now, I'll just...
As we listen to what Dean's asked here, I'm going to bring in the Davy family's lawyer, Julia Jasper, who we met briefly in episode 1. How this investigation was conducted, particularly in these early hours, is why she's adamant it all has to be revisited.
But there was problems from the beginning, you know, from the ambulance not showing up through to the way the crime scene was mishandled, through the way the Webber was dealt with. It just, in my opinion, didn't work as it should have.
It's a difficult one for people because at the end of the day, men went into Dean's home, a teenager, people look at that and go, well, he had a right. People effectively broke in.
The law's really clear. You've got a right to defend yourself and you've got a right to defend your home from attackers. No one's arguing that he didn't have a right to defend himself. I think the issue is that we don't know really what happened. There's so much contradiction. We don't know. There's been a lot of assumptions made about exactly where the fatal stabbings occurred, and that's really important from a legal perspective. There's so many contradictions in the versions of events that were given by Dean on the night and when he was interviewed with police. It's, if he properly has the defence of self-defence, nobody has an issue with that. But what we have an issue with is not knowing what actually happened. So being unable to really apply the law to it because we don't know what happened. You know, we're a long way from knowing, you know, as precisely as we should be able to what happened.
You're currently working at the moment?
That is correct. Yes.
Yep, what do you do?
I'm an apprentice fitter welder at Pacific Ridge.
I'm going to play a lot of the recording here. It's not only fascinating insight into the early hours of the investigation. As I've said, this police station interview has never been released publicly. That's important because of the inconsistencies it points to. Detective Neal doesn't exactly jump straight into an interrogation. He takes a very gentle approach and for about 8 minutes asks Dean questions about where he went to school and where he worked, perhaps just to ease his nerves a touch before beginning to delve into the night.
Street at Alva Beach earlier today. Now, what can you tell me about what happened today?
So I believe it was about midnight. I had a distressed lady come knocking on my door.
Yep.
She said, help me. I've done something to my shoulder. We weren't sure of the injury at the time. She was, you know, physically shaken. She's like, there's these blokes after me. They're sitting across the road. They're throwing me out of the buggy. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'll call an ambulance.
Now, there are much bigger holes in Dean's story. But there's your first separate issue worth noting. The teenager being influenced by Candace's claim she'd been violently kicked off the buggy.
So, you know when you said you felt your life's in danger at that time, what made you feel that your life was in danger?
The fact that these people are trying to get into my house, you know, and hurt one of us. And, and seeing what they'd already done to Candace, who knows what they would have done. Like, there's an endless possibility of what they could have done to us, like 3 against 1 injured.
In the days after this, Candace would concede to police that she might have exaggerated that story to Dean. So right from the get-go, these investigators are dealing with unreliable accounts, and we'll come back to how quickly her story changed. That fear and confusion is a major cause of what Dean did next.
So, and just in relation to Candace, when she came there, she basically said that there being that she'd been pushed out of the buggy.
Yeah, so they had assaulted her.
Yep.
And I didn't know how serious her injuries were at the time.
Yep.
I just know she was screaming and call the ambos, call the police.
There's a key question that arises here. Did Dean arm himself solely based off Candace's claims, or did Tom, Corey and Louis add to Dean's concerns for his safety, his terror? What was their demeanour towards Dean and Candace? And did they act in a way that was further threatening towards Dean, that could go even further to justifying his actions?
I suppose what I'm looking at is that today we dealt with the person who broke into 4 houses with people inside and all the rest of it and demanded and made threats and that sort of thing. But there was never anyone hurt, and that's on the majority of occasions when something like that happens. There usually isn't anyone hurt, and it's very, very rare for someone to be killed. So what made you think that you would be killed if that...
It's just, well, it runs through your head, you know, what would happen, and they were, you know, reefing on the doors and trying to find a way in. And like, they weren't there to rob the place. They weren't there for valuables. They were there for us. That's probably a bit different from all your other scenarios.
Yeah. Did you think that they were there for, when you say us, as in you and Candace, so did you think they were there to get Candace to come back?
I believe they were there to hurt Candace for reaching out for help, and I was dragged into that. So they're like...
And what made you think that, I suppose? That they were there to hurt Candace more? What made you think they were there to hurt Candace more?
Because that's like, come back out, you stupid bitch, we'll get you, Candace, you know. And then they were going at me when I was trying to tell them to leave, like, oh, you know, come here and fight us. Buddy, you're weak scum, I'm going to find you. You know, we'll never forget this.
Were they saying things around that?
I was on the phone the whole time to the operator, the Queensland police operator. You know, she said, lock everything was locked, you know, we hid into the little kitchen area there and whatnot. And they go around, you know, yelling out, you scum, you know, we're going to come in and bash you, we're going to kill you. Why are you hiding in there, scum? I can see you. Threats like that. And then...
We're going to bash you, we're going to kill you, you scum, stupid bitch. Those are seriously menacing things to say. What could have made them be so enraged? Especially Tom. Why would he be yelling anything like that? Or was it Louis and Corey making the threats before going and getting Tom? Even then, it's a pretty inexplicable escalation, from Candace just coming off a buggy and a drink-driving Louis wanting to find her to potentially stay out of trouble. It brings me to an important point. Later at the inquest, both Candace and Louis were asked about these threats, and both said they don't remember hearing them. And you can't make them out on the 000 recordings. Now, I'm not saying those threats weren't made, but it all raises doubt about Dean's story. Was he exaggerating to plead self-defence, or are Louis and Candace lying or mistaken?
There's no doubt he was frightened. We've listened to the 000 calls. Clearly, and there's no doubt that there were things that fed into why he was frightened. But there's also no corroborating evidence about, you know, the threats being made from outside the house. And there's so much conflicting evidence from him about how many people were there, what they were saying, what they did, and even about how they got in the house, you know. And all of this is relevant when you're trying to determine whether or not his actions were reasonable and proportionate in the circumstances.
Can you go over what they were saying again?
Yeah.
What sort of things you could hear them saying?
So they were looking, they're like, we're going to come get you, Candace, what are you doing, you stupid bitch? You bloody scum, we can see you hiding. And but it was also directed at me because I was telling them to leave the property, leave the property, leave the property. And they're going, oh, why? I'm like, I don't need a reason to get off my property.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you're just a weak scum, I'll fuck you up. And just, that was the general tone. And I thought it had ended when they walked away and got in the buggy. But
It's becoming very apparent now that if those threats were made as Dean describes, it was when Louis and Corey were at the home, before going back on that buggy to go find Tom and bring him back to Dean's house.
They the first time, so when they walked in, they were looking for Candace.
Yep.
Come back out here, saying, I can't remember what they said, but they were like, don't hide, I can see you there, you scum, and carrying on. And they were just like,
so that's the first time they came?
Yeah.
And did they come inside on that occasion?
No.
No?
Because there was only 2 of them initially.
2, yep.
That I saw.
That you saw?
I think there might have been one driver of the buggy, but and then they drove away. Not sure if they got more people or what, but then they came back.
No way would Corey and that talk like that. No way. No way. No way.
It's confusing for us listening to it. So imagine for a moment you're a grieving dad who's always known your son as a gentleman. But you're hearing and reading this about the threats Dean's describing. David Christensen, Corey's dad, just refuses to believe it. What grasps me immediately talking to you, David, is none of us were there, were we? So you know your boy. You have a strong opinion about how he would have behaved in that situation.
That's right. I know what he would have been saying and everything.
But then obviously police have come up with a different version of events. And how difficult is it for you to believe a way that your son would have behaved, but then police telling you, well, no, they attacked Dean and he had a right to defend himself?
No. That's the story everybody got, that they attacked. They went there to break in and attack him, He had nothing to do with it. They were going there to try and get Candace.
When you listen to the 000 call, you obviously hear a very frightened Dean. And one important point is he claims that there were threats being yelled out by whoever it was outside the door, but effectively Louis, Corey and Tom. He says things like they were yelling out, "You're scum, we're going to get you." What do you make of that? What do you make of that?
No way. Corey and Tom would never speak like that. Never. But why? Why would a kid... that's what I can't work out. Why would he stab him?
I hate to raise the point again, David, but it's just because we've listened to it all, I've read it all. I think in that situation, even though we haven't heard from Dean ever again, I think his version is threats, really menacing threats were being yelled out to him. So if that was his response even today, how would you react to that?
No, Tom and them would not have been saying them things to him and singing out. All they would have been trying to say to him was open the door, get the door open so we can come in and see Candace, or get Candace and get her help. I know Corey. He would not be singing out them words. No way. And Tom would not be. Tom wouldn't be. No way.
Could it have been Louis, David?
Well, I don't know.
Back to Dean's police station interview. As it goes on, he's handed a notepad. It's a layout of the Alva Beach property. And he's asked to give an indication of where everyone was when the confrontation finally happened.
They've come in here?
Yep. That's correct.
So, and you said that
This creates even further doubt about whether his actions were reasonable and in self-defence. So, just to quickly describe that layout, the door opens into a living room. The kitchen is to the right. They're divided by a long kitchen counter. You have to walk several metres inside and right around the bench to get into the kitchen itself. So keep in mind that Tom's blood was found splattered on the fridge and cabinets around and inside the kitchen, where police would later find Candace lying on the ground, where it appears she'd been the whole time.
So Candace is on this...
She's, right there.
Just on the floor?
Yeah, on the floor. Yeah.
Okay, so we've put...
It all leads us to perhaps one of the most integral parts of this case. Where Tom and Corey were stabbed and who actually went inside Dean's home. Because as you're about to hear, Dean's story, Louis' story, and the forensics all contradict each other about what happened when his door was forced open.
I thought I only had an altercation, like there was 3 of them. You know, the main bloke that got me, then his mate holding me, and then the third one, I don't know where he was, and he was in the house, but I don't know where. I can't remember.
Are you sure he came in?
Yes, there was 3 of them. 3 of them came through the house, yep, in a V formation.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
Pausing there. 3 men entering in a V formation is what Dean's saying.
And there's three big burly blokes. I stood no chance.
So how many people came into your...
3.
Yeah,
3. I remember seeing 3.
3?
Yep.
All right, and...
But here's the thing. Louis Bengoas always claimed he didn't go inside, while the forensic blood evidence only places Tom with certainty in the house. So what about Corey? Well, the only direct blood from him was found outside, particularly on the balcony railing. Inside, forensics only found what's called a blood transfer on a thermometer that had fallen on the floor just centimetres from the front door. A forensic expert explained at the inquest that blood transfer was a heel print made by Dean. That means Dean has stepped in Corey's blood somewhere and transferred it into the house that way. Again, no other blood of Corey's was found in Dean's house. I've seen the photos. It's not a whole footprint. It's a very small smeared stain. It's minuscule compared to the large amount of Tom's blood splattered on the kitchen fridge. What the Davy and Christensen families and their lawyers believe that all points to is Corey was stabbed outside, then perhaps Tom retaliated and attacked Dean inside. The Davy family's lawyer, Julia Jasper, strongly believes that should reframe how this case is looked at, raising the question, were Dean's deadly actions reasonable self-defence? I'm not saying Dean, who was clearly frightened, is lying. In fact, he's always been adamant he saw 3 men come through the door. But again, it's more of his account that can't be backed up by cold, hard evidence.
So the basis of the findings of the coroner were that Corey came in through the door and was stabbed inside the house, so that he had, essentially attacked or gone to attack Dean Webber and was stabbed inside the house, and that Tom followed him in. But that's based on the version of events given by Webber and is not supported by the forensic evidence or even what we think is sort of logical.
So you're saying where the blood is?
Where was Corey killed? The only evidence that Corey was inside the house is a blood transfer, on an object that would have been on the wall inside the front door. Other than that, Corey's DNA is only found a couple of metres away from the front door. So Dean's version of events has never been tested because he's never been able to be cross-examined, but has been and was accepted by the coroner as being completely consistent and reliable and should be relied on when it's contradicted by the DNA evidence, because he's saying that they came through the door and attacked him, and it's just not supported by the DNA.
If that's not the case, how does that change legally the argument of self-defence?
It can change it in terms of in relation to Corey. If he's opened the door and come out to confront rather than being attacked inside his house, it can change whether or not self-defence is available. I can't posit what would happen at a trial, but nobody is, advocating there must be a trial. What the Davies want is that they want the evidence to be properly investigated so that a decision about whether or not a prosecution should be commenced is based on the best version of the evidence that is available to us. That's what we're after. We're not after a conviction. We're after finding out as best we can what actually happened and then asking for somebody with the appropriate training and experience to make a decision about whether or not this is a matter that should go in front of a jury. I don't have an opinion about whether or not he should be convicted. I don't even have an opinion about whether or not he should be prosecuted, because all we're trying to get to is the point at which there is an accurate recitation of what happened as best as we can know, so that a proper assessment can be made.
As the Davies lawyer, you mentioned Corey and where he was stabbed and that's a point of conjecture. Tom obviously entered the house. As the Davies lawyer, do you dispute that he attacked Dean first?
We don't, but again, I don't know because I wasn't there, I know that, that if he's just seen his compatriot, I know they didn't know each other, they weren't really friends, hadn't known each other for a long time, but if he's just witnessed the person he's with be stabbed by the person inside the house, he knows that Candace is in there and is in there injured. If he's going in, it would seem to me that it would be more likely that what he's going in to do is to protect Candace. But this is just my perspective of it, and I wasn't there and I can't know. But if that's what he witnessed, then it must change how we view his actions after that. I don't for a moment believe that both of them go in, and I think at one point Webber claimed that there was like a wrestling pile driver move into the ground. I mean,
it was just get off me, they dropped me straight onto my head, bang, and
when you were swinging the knife, was that when you were standing up, or was that when you were down on the ground? Or
yeah, this is while I'm being picked up. Yeah. So I have no idea where I hit him. Yep. I don't know.
You don't know
and
where
it was pitch black, so yep. Yeah. And then, yeah.
After hearing that, I want to replay you part of Dean's 000 call that night, just after this all happened.
They know what's going on.
So they realise I've just killed the bloke, most likely.
Yeah, look, is the guy still lying outside?
Yeah, he's still
he's not moving?
He can't move. I think I stabbed him in the heart.
Okay.
The questions we and Julia are raising here do come with the benefit of hindsight. This interview is just a few hours after the traumatic event. But that's the point. Once forensic and DNA evidence was gathered, Dean's version is never challenged by investigators the way we are now.
And how long from when they were at the door
seconds
to the time they got to you?
I'd say one second, like literally once they came through that curtain.
Yeah.
And I saw three of them. It was like, that was it. It's like no response time. I just tried kicking, trying to get, and it's arms, legs waving everywhere.
Remember Tom's blood I mentioned earlier? On the fridge and cabinet, past and around the kitchen bench. How did it get there in a flurried attack that lasted about a second, that, based on Dean's story, appears to have happened in front of that bench immediately as Tom came through the sliding door? Once again, I want to stress here, I'm not suggesting Dean is lying. We're told he's traumatised still, and I trust that's genuinely the case. But there's stuff that just doesn't seem to add up. There are clear discrepancies you would have thought would be clarified in a potential murder investigation, especially when the young man who killed two men and whose recollections are being relied upon so heavily is in such shock he ends his police interview with this.
How likely do you think it is that if someone was to be stabbed in the chest with a reasonably long-bladed knife, that it could be it could potentially be fatal?
Did I stab him?
Sorry?
Did I stab him?
They've got stab wounds to the chest.
depends where it hits you. I don't know. I don't know too much about what a knife could do. I just didn't know what else to defend myself with. I didn't realise it was fatal.
Sorry?
I didn't realise it was going to be fatal.
Do you still have questions about what actually happened in that house?
That interview just, for me, I didn't feel like we were asking all the right questions. Felt like it didn't go long enough. I think a detective of Gavin's experience, I mean, I hadn't sat in very many interviews with Gavin, but I think, whilst you have an opportunity to interview a suspect, some hard questions should be asked. And there wasn't a lot of challenging going on to Dean's account of what he said happened.
Well, effectively what he did say was 3 men entered in a V formation, that he stabbed them in self-defence, that they were yelling out that they were going to get him, that he was scum. Was he just believed in that moment?
Look, if you listen to what I had to say, it's very clear that I didn't believe it. And it's not that I didn't believe it, it's just that I didn't have enough information to make a decision either way. It's my number one complaint of police, and probably a lot of what people do in everyday life. They form an opinion on something, and then they try to make everything fit that opinion.
That's an incredibly bold accusation for Justin to make, especially when you take into account Gavin Neal is the more experienced of the two. Justin and Gavin are certainly not on friendly terms. Still, it's quite something here to have an officer who was in that interview room and at the scene calling out the investigation, or, in his mind, a lack of one.
I mean, forensics hadn't been through the house. We hadn't considered, the blood on the fridge. We hadn't considered the blood outside on the door. There are so many things that I think as police should have been considered before any decisions were made. And even if that's what he was thinking, why tell the loved ones of someone who's lost their family, we may not charge the person who stabbed your son to death.
Before evidence had been gathered.
Exactly. And you know what?
That's a claim that comes directly from the Davy family. That Detective Neal met with them days after Tom and Corey had died and said to them he'd decided it was self-defence. The insinuation is that forensics had not properly been considered before he did so.
Why would someone of Gavin's experience make a decision in that moment before even forensics had been gathered?
Look, I'm not experienced in homicide investigations. It just so happens how that unfolded. I was intimately involved in almost every aspect of it. And I was just, to be honest, in shock that we could actually, even if that was our opinion, that we could actually tell people that without considering all the forensics and all the evidence. I feel like not enough consideration was given to the forensic side of what went on. I mean, why was there blood splatter on the fridge, and did we examine all the knives in the house? Or did we just pick the one Dean said that was the knife that was used? Look, I've since found out there was a number of defensive wounds on one of the victims. Like, did we take that into consideration before making decisions? I mean, did the coroner even take that into consideration?
The families would argue, no, not at all.
That's confusing, isn't it? If you look at even simple, really basic investigations, where you, say, go to a domestic and neither party's going to talk, you're going to look at all the evidence. But like, 2 people have lost their lives, and it seems like an opinion was formed very quickly, and I can't speak for when that opinion was formed. And it just seems like everything had to fit into that opinion. And like, I'm an experienced police officer and I'm feeling that way about it. So I can't imagine what the families feel.
But Gavin Neal should not have been judge and jury on that night and make that call before any forensic evidence came in at all.
I think that Gavin Neal is inadequate.
He made the call and then maybe realised that he'd made the wrong call, but then didn't want to get egg on his face to change that call, because that would be a difficult thing for a detective to do, I would imagine.
They're scathing accusations. So, coming up, it's time for the lead detective on this case to have his say. It was a stuff-up, wasn't it?
No, definitely not.
We've heard a lot about Gavin Neal. In the next episode, we hear from him. And he's got some strong opinions of his own.
Number one thing, I think Justin Luke's an arsehole.
As, in a surprisingly candid conversation, Gavin drops a brand new bomb. So did you think you were going to charge Dean?
Oh, 100%.
Why didn't you? Alva Beach, Death at the Door is a 9 podcasts and 60 minutes production. Written and presented by me, Adam Hegarty. The producer is Jess Lodge. Editing and sound design by Maddie White.